I'm just, in the interest of full disclosure, going to talk just for a minute about sort of where I come from, and hopefully we'll explain a little bit about why I am here responding. So I am, as Peter mentioned, with the New York State Council for the Humanities, which is the state affiliate of the NEH. So we are a state partner of the NEH, but just in terms of understanding us as an organization, we are solely focused on the public humanities. Unlike our colleagues up in Washington, our work is only focused on the public aspects of humanities within the confines of New York State. And we work in two ways. We provide grants for public programs, both the planning, research phase, and the implementation of public programs. And then we also offer turnkey humanities programs to any nonprofit around the state. Most of those focus on text-based discussion and often use archival materials as the jumping off point for those discussions. So that's sort of how we work. The one other way that we work, and probably the reason that I am here, is because we work to really strengthen and expand the state's public humanities community and infrastructure through something called the Partnership and Convening Initiative, which we just gave a name so that we could have a budget line, candidly. But it does things like our Humanities Center initiative, of which NYU is a member, that does things including offer public humanities fellowships. We have one new public humanities fellow in the audience, actually. And also we support a variety of kind of cross-discipline and cross-organization collaborations within the humanities across New York State. And so we really see New York Cityscapes as yet another opportunity for that kind of collaboration. That being said, where do digital humanities generally and digital archives fit into our work? We are certainly well aware, I will say, of the potential for a kind of sea change that this means in terms of the work that we do. So as a staff, we have a number of people who are familiar, some much more familiar than me, with a lot of the work that's going on in these arenas, and we see the implications. That being said, we are really not a driving force in this arena. And I think to some degree that has to do with sort of where digital humanities and particularly sort of digital archive projects are right now, and perhaps as a relation to that, kind of where funding for these kinds of projects lies. So I can talk more about my thoughts about this in Q&A, but maybe some of these themes will come out as I talk a little bit about kind of what I took away from these three presentations, sort of from my lens of the public humanities. And I think the number one thing I took away, which I'm guessing all of you took away, is just the vast amount of material that has already been digitized or exists in digital form in archives out there. And, you know, Don's scale slide, you know, just gives a little feel of that. And then also how much more there is to do just to digitize what we know is out there. And that is a huge, huge project. And I give you guys amazing kudos for, you know, coming to work every day and chipping away at that, because, you know, I know at the Museum of the City of New York how many more, you know, paintings you have, and those costumes. I remember that costume collection. you have a lot of work to do. And also it's so clear from each of these projects and from the examples you guys are giving that each one of these projects itself has huge potential for research and scholarship, you know, in new kinds of research and scholarship, because those materials are available. And also to provide information to the public as well. I think, not surprisingly, given that these are archival projects and given those kinds of, you know, the challenges we outlined just in terms of getting this work done, that all of you outlined in terms of just getting this work done, it's also clear to me that the focus still continues to be on getting stuff digitized, documenting it, making it browsable or searchable, right? Making it accessible. And that's obviously the first step. But one of the things that, in sort of thinking about, you know, what are the challenges or opportunities that kind of lie beyond that in terms of thinking about the work that you guys are doing? Well, I think there are a couple. One is just the thing that we're all aware of, which is just the digital noise out there, and that you can put a lot of stuff up on the web and I don't know if everybody here knew all those projects that were talked about today. I'm guessing they didn't, and all those resources. So just making sure that people know that those resources are out there and usable for scholarship. If you're just a curious person who wants to learn more about Timothy Leary, that those materials are available. So that's one huge challenge, obviously. But the other sort of challenge or opportunity that really is foremost, I think, in the work that we do at the Humanities Council in sort of the more public realm is sort of the next step, right? Which is moving from, well, in public programs, we talk about it with our partners as moving from open to the public to truly designed for the public, right? The difference between a lecture that you say you can come to, sure, and a program that has really been designed to communicate with you as somebody who may not have a deep expertise or a pre-existing knowledge, but might be really engaged with this. So really helping the public to kind of make meaning and engage with the material than beyond just seeing it or reading it or searching it. And I thought you gave some great examples of some projects that are kind of going in that direction. The QPL History Pin project, that great, the Goethe Institute project. So things like that that really, take these resources and really build new models for engagement. That's something that I think that has a lot of excitement, and certainly something that we see a hunger for and an audience for as this next phase. I am partly a funder, and I wear that hat, and Peter in particular said I should probably talk a little bit about how that interacts with all of this. So one thing, Lacey, I thought your list was fabulous of all the funders. That should, make all of you who are working on digital projects feel good. But it also shows something that I'm aware of as a funder, which is that a lot of the support, particularly the support from big foundations and big national government funders, has gone to straight up digitization access projects, right? And look, clearly there is a need, so there is no question but that's important. And then there have been some other big funders who've been looking particularly at emerging research opportunities. Mellon, as I think everybody knows, the Digital Humanities Initiative at the NEH, really looking at things like Omeka and some of the other research opportunities that intersect with that. But where funding has been kind of less of a driver, I think, is in this more public engagement piece. So there is funding, but often it's funding for tools, and those are tools that come very far downstream in a digital project, right? So the digitization has happened, the search aids have been created, it's online, and then somebody says, okay, now we should make a tool for the public to engage with this. So let's make an app, or let's make a podcast if it's an oral history project, or an online exhibit. But there aren't as many projects or funding streams that have really been looking at how do we conceive of digital projects with archives from the outset? How do we think of engagement as a part of the process at the same time you're setting up that light stand, right? I will say, I think everybody here, I'm sure, is probably aware that, was it last week or the week before, that the NEH just announced their digital projects for the public funding initiative. And, I know Brett, I love his work. I do think this is kind of late in coming, but really great that it's coming from the NEH in this way. And I think it will start to drive some other funders and drive some projects that will get national attention in ways that will really help with that aspect of things. So that's something to stay aware of. And I think there's also potential in projects to start to change what you're proposing to funders as well. Obviously, I can say that as a funder. It's a lot harder when you're actually trying to get the money out of us. I totally get that. So those were just a few of the things that kind of were percolating with me. The one other thing, I don't want to take much longer because I know we're running low on time, but Tom and Peter were aware that we have a project that we're working on at the council that is in super, super early days, and asked me to just sort of share that with you as maybe as an example. And I'm also happy to share examples of projects we have funded. I will say there are not a lot. And part of that is because we are a pretty small funder. We fund digital projects, we consider them just the same way we do anything, but our dollars are pretty small, which I think is a piece of that. But we also work in other ways, as I said, and one of the things we're doing right now is we've entered into a partnership with History Pin and with the New School for Public Engagement. And the partnership is focused on how the humanities can play a role in long-term recovery from and reflection on disasters. And we're specifically using Sandy as a case study. And the things about this that I think kind of speak to some of the questions that are percolating for me are, for us as a group, an academic institution, a digital entity, and a public-facing humanities organization, the humanities question is first, right? That's what comes first. It's not a set of material, it's not an archive, it's that question. And what we're hoping to do is kind of bring together the council's work, both work we did as immediate funders after Sandy for the cultural community, but also our expertise in community engagement. History Pin's digital Sandy mapping and collection that's already gone on, so there's already a fairly large archive that they've been developing, and the New School's scholarship across a whole range of disciplines that has to do with these issues around reflection on disaster. And some of the courses, they developed, in fact, courses within like 10 weeks after Sandy that were engaging with some of these issues. So we're exploring. We could fail grandly, we could fail, you know, in a lot of small ways, but we're exploring this model that would use sort of on the ground engagements, somewhat similar to what we're looking at the Queens Public Library model, digital tools, coursework, and new research all at once to create a blueprint for how communities can collect, document, and engage with the impact of disasters to rebuild community and collect around them, with the digital archives piece being a fundamental piece from the beginning of the project, but one dynamic piece of a larger kind of public engagement.